Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. God has given us unlimited treasures in His Word. Every time we open it, we can discover a new treasure or admire an old one. What will we find today? Let's dig in. Here's Carla Early with Treasure Hunt in the Word.
I love how God showcases women in the Bible, even in times that women weren't considered important members of society. One remarkable instance is in Exodus 1. Scholars can't agree which of the pharaohs reigned during this time of Moses. When I looked it up, I found 13 different suggestions on who may have been the most powerful leader of the time in Egypt. The Bible doesn't bother to clarify. God just calls him the king of Egypt, or Pharaoh. Yet he is quite specific in telling us the names of the two women who were midwives at the time, Shiphrah and Puah. The Lord doesn't make it clear if they were Hebrews themselves or if they were Egyptians who served as midwives to the Hebrew slaves. But we know that they, the lowest of the low, feared the Lord and made a huge difference in their time by their obedience to God. Let me read you the passage from Exodus 1:15 through 21. Then the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, of whom the name of one was Shiphrah and the name of the other Puah. And he said, when you do the duties of a midwife for the Hebrew women and see them on their birthing stools, if it is a son, then you shall kill him, but if it's a daughter, then she shall live. But the midwives feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the male children alive. So the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said to them, why have you done this thing and saved the male children alive? And the midwives said to Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are lively and give birth before the midwives come to them. Therefore God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and grew very mighty. And so it was, because the midwives feared God, that he provided households for them. Just imagine these two women called before the ruler of the land, being told to kill the very babies they were meant to deliver into the world. They couldn't do that. They didn't have the 10 Commandments, but they knew killing babies was wrong, no matter what their society said, or what our society says today, or what the king said back then. They knew that God values life, and they did too. They feared God more than man. They chose obedience to God every time they delivered a baby boy. We make choices every day. We can obey God or compromise with the world. We might be called to the carpet, so to speak, as the midwives were for their disobedience. But as Peter answered the Jewish rulers when they commanded him not to preach in Jesus' name, we ought to obey God rather than man. This is the first act of civil disobedience in the Bible. They stood for what they knew was right. They became an example to others in their own time and down through the centuries by their faith and obedience. Shiphrah and Puah stood together on this. It doesn't say what other midwives did, because there most likely were others, possibly working for them. But these two women encouraged one another, and they stood together. They stood with the Lord. And as Ecclesiastes 4:9 through 12 says, two are better than one. Though one may be overpowered by another, two can withstand him. And a threefold cord is not quickly broken. We are stronger together. When called to answer to Pharaoh for their disobedience, these two women used his own prejudices against him. He treated the Hebrews like animals, and animals don't need midwives to deliver their babies. And if the babies were already delivered when they got there, well, they couldn't help that, right? These women risked their own lives in their disobedience to Pharaoh. But as Proverbs 16:7 says, when a man's ways please the Lord, he makes even his enemies at peace with him. And they did please the Lord. Because of their faith and obedience, God's people multiplied and flourished. And it says God provided households for them. Back then, midwives were sometimes the barren women of the community. They couldn't have children, but they could assist others. If this was the case for Shiphrah and Puah, God blessed them more than they could have imagined. He gave them families. They had children of their own. As Proverbs 31:30 says, "Charm is deceitful and beauty is passing, but the woman who fears the Lord is to be praised." That was Shiphrah and Puah. And that should be us as well. We should fear him, obey him, and trust him to take care of the rest. So when you're tempted to go along with the crowd or fear people more than you fear God in whatever situation you're in, remember the obedience of Shiphrah and Puah and follow their example.
You can contact us at treasurehuntintheword@gmail.com. We'd love to hear the treasures God has given you through his word. You can listen to other episodes at our website, which you can find in the description below. Thanks for listening, and remember, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.